or more. So they started a podcast to talk all about it, and 30 and Nerdy was born. Oh, 30 and Nerdy was born. You might hear them chat about shows like The Witcher or movies like Lord of the Rings. And if Josh has to choose, he is loyal to Marvel, while Tyler goes more for DC. Yes, Tyler goes more for DC. Now come, one and all, nerd up or shut up, just answer the call to be part of our journey into magical worlds. Join us and cheers to ya nerds. Join us and cheers to ya nerds.
Small but mighty crowd.
Do you want a microphone or do you want to go with
I don't know. I think I'd probably be able to project. I've done theater.
That's true.
And I told Michael Bean, who was in Aliens, that when he comes here, if he wants to join us, he's more than welcome.
That'd be great.
So, hi.
Hello.
So my name is Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Moderating this weekend. I'm a millennial, so all my notes are on my phone. I hope that's okay. So my theater teacher, he adores you.
Oh, he does?
And he sent a couple of questions.
Okay.
And they're very good. So I'm going to ask those, and we're going to turn it over to the folks who are here.
Okay.
So Jerry Malloy, my theater professor, who celebrated his birthday yesterday, he said, did you ever feel unsafe or frightened on the set of The Birds?
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I'd done a movie called The Children's Hour, which I guess Alfred Hitchcock had seen. I was 12 at the time, and he requested meeting me, so I went to his bungalow on the Universal lot, and my mother, of course, had to drive me. So she sat outside, and I went in with Alfred Hitchcock, and I was born in Bristol, England, and that is where he stores all his wine. So he says, oh yes, there's a wonderful storage place there. And he starts listing wines. And I'm 12 and I'm thinking, oh, okay. I mean, it was the oddest interview. And then he told me how to cook a steak, because I would need to know that when I got married, and it was very important. And you have to put it on at a very high temperature, but it has to hit 125, and then you take it off, and you put aluminium over the top of it, and then it'll come up to a perfect rare. So I thought, all right, well, years later I've tried it, and it does work. It's perfect. So I like medium rare a little, so I could put it on a little longer. It was just so odd. And then he treated me like I was his daughter, not intimidating at all. I could ask questions like the jungle gym, when there are fake birds on there, and some of them were pieces of cardboard up on the lines, but then they put real birds in there. And I said, aren't people going to know that there's fake birds there? And he goes, your eye sees movement, you'll assume everything is alive. And to this day, I can watch that movie, think I found the fake bird, and then it moves. And the same, we shot the movie twice. We shot it in Bodega Bay, all the sand dunes and all of that, and the little house where it was my birthday, and the seagull hits me on the head and all of that. He picked that house up, and the tree, that massive tree that was in front, and moved it to the Universal lot. And so it was on a sound stage. And so we shot the movie twice. I did a thing with Tippy at the Academy one day, and I didn't know why they'd shot it twice, but she informed me it was because of her lighting. I said, oh, and if you watch the movie, she's always in that soft glow. Suzanne Plachette was, kind of harsher, and in those days she didn't have the greatest skin. But one day she shows up in the car when we're out there by the house, and she's wearing a blonde wig. And she gets out of the car and she says, "Do you think he'll notice me now?" I mean, oh my God. I at 12 didn't know what she was talking about, but I finally figured he only likes blondes. But you know, it's weird. I know Tippy had a bad time, but there was only one other woman, and I can't remember who it was, if it was Carol Baker or, but everybody adored him. I mean, all his women, the woman, a Psycho, I talked to Jamie Lee, she just said her mom adored him. So I don't know what it was some freak thing, maybe it got exaggerated over the years, who knows. But he was great to me. When we were on the set down there, I'd have tea with him in the afternoon. And his assistant, Peggy Robinson, would come with her china teapot and her cups and saucers and her biscuits, because every afternoon at 4:30 he broke. It was tea time. And he always wore 3-piece suits. And I would sit there and have tea with him in the afternoon. I don't even know what we talked about. But he would tell dirty jokes, and I would come home and I'd say these jokes when I got home, and my aunt would go, "Where did you hear that?" I said, "Oh, Alfred Hitchcock." It was like, but he was like magic in a weird sort of way. He did have a little bit of a sadistic streak. We did all the running down the hill when we were in Bodega Bay, and we're running like crazy down that hill. I don't know how many times we did that, it was one after the other. But when we got to the soundstage, they had this massive treadmill. And then all of the kids had to get on this treadmill. And up above were not marionettes, what do they call those? Mobiles, with blackbirds and stuff like that. And well, you wanted to be in the front on that treadmill, because if one kid went, oh my God, wipe out. There was a huge mattress on the other end, and you're running like crazy to keep turning it up higher and higher and higher. Like it was madness. And then you see 5 bodies flying off at the end. Oh my God, it was ridiculous. But he was wonderful to me. I have no complaints. He was just absolutely terrific. Oh, there was another one. At the end of the movie, when we leave and we all come out of the door, there was no door there. And I said, "Well, there's no door." He says, "Well, if there was a door, how could I see you?" He says, "Let's show her, Rod." So Rod Taylor, literally, what he does is he mimes opening the door, and this wedge, like a door, goes like this, and the light changes, and all of a sudden it's bright. You watch that movie, you assume there's a door there. And he said, "You see, that is the magic of movies." And I thought he was terrific. And also, I think when I did Alien, he was a huge influence on Ridley Scott, because Hitchcock's whole theory was you didn't quite see it, you weren't quite sure what you were seeing, and Ridley took that to a great advantage. When the Alien, you see parts of it, you're not quite sure in your mind, it becomes more terrifying because you are creating it, not what's being created on the screen, until the very end of the movie when, well, me, and and then Ridley is in that shuttle, and he's right behind her, and you're watching her get undressed, and you don't even know he's there, and then he just steps out. It's so creepy.
I thought this was an interesting question also from my theater professor. He says, "The Children's Hour was a highly controversial film for a 12-year-old to be involved with, staying much closer to Lillian Hellman's original play. Did your parents try to shield you at all from the themes of the storyline, or explain it to you carefully and trust you to handle it in a mature manner?"
All right, well, The Children's Hour had been already done once by William Wyler. It was called The Loudest Whisper. And in those days, it was written as a lesbian piece. But for movies, they had to change it. So the male character did the Audrey Hepburn character sleep with a man and, out of wedlock. So that was what the original one was. But then William Wyler wanted to do what it was as it was written. Well, when we came to this country, I was born in Bristol, and when we emigrated here, my mom didn't know anybody, and the lady down in the apartment building, the landlord said, well, why don't you go talk to Mrs. Robinson because her kids are cute and she does modeling and stuff. So that's how we sort of got into the whole thing. My sister got the first interview she ever went on, which was a huge cattle call that I went on too. She was 3 1/2 and I was 6 1/2. I mean, it was totally ridiculous. But it was somebody up there likes me with Pierre Angeli and Paul Newman. So then my parents decided that they would get us involved in like a little acting group and stuff like that. So we had a drama teacher, his name was Frank Wyka, and a musical theater person, and his name was Bill Lockwood. Well, they lived together, and but we became great friends. We used to go over and have lunch with him and stuff like that. I think they went on to create the South Coast Rep, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, Frank used to go over all of my parts, so he went over my parts when I auditioned for the Children's Hour. I was 11 then. So when it came time, I got the movie and to play Rosalie. A lot of parents were pulling their kids out of the movie because of the subject matter. But my mom, she goes, oh, it's just like Frank and Bill, only 2 women. Oh, that seemed perfectly normal to me. They were perfectly fine. So when I'm telling the lie, I'm actually telling the lie. I mean, because it didn't seem wrong to me. So, I mean, we were raised Catholic. We always went to Catholic schools, everything like that. But my mom was really pretty amazing to just sort of figure that out. And it did, I mean, no, they were great. I mean, and what was so interesting from the first movie, Faye Banger was playing the aunt. Miriam Hopkins had played the Shirley MacLaine character. And so for our movie, Miriam Hopkins was now the aunt, and Faye Banger was now the grandmother. So he brought all these people over. So when I grew up, I wanted desperately to be able to play the Shirley MacLaine part. She was fantastic to me. She was like, I didn't realize what a major influence she was on me. I had this dream about her. It was in Las Vegas, of all places, and a big, huge swimming pool. And I remember going, oh, there's Shirley MacLaine, and walking down this swimming pool alongside of it so that I could get to her to tell her how much of an influence she had made on me. She was so cool. They would do wardrobe things, and in those days it was all film. It wasn't. We didn't have digital, so you do it on film, and there was a pedestal, and you'd stand on the pedestal, and then you'd just sort of turn around. Well, we were told not to hang out around Shirley because of her language. But I was in line, I was sitting there, and I'm watching her. She is cracking jokes with the crew. She was just fantastic, and I thought, that's what it's all about. They make you. I mean, your crew makes you. And I always have taken that as something that is, I mean, she just was great. When I had my big emotional scene, she was there. She hugged me and said, oh, that was wonderful, darling, and let's get her a dressing room. And they put me in a dressing room with ice packs. I was hyperventilating. My mother was up in my dressing room, and she was 8.5 months pregnant. They said if she had seen me, she would have had the baby then. I mean, I don't know if it was acting or not. William Wyler just pushed me until I had that breaking point in the movie. I don't know whether you ever saw it or not, but it's a wonderful movie. And we couldn't even go see it because it was X-rated, condemned by the church and stuff. But we went to the premiere, so Mary Balkin and myself, we got all dressed up, and we did our thing with Army Archer, and they all went into the theater, and then we were taken to the Brown Derby by our chauffeur. And we went there, but the next day my mother took me to see the movie. And it was Easter Sunday. So, good old Mom.
So in my research, I learned that you've done some voice acting, dabbled a little, and specifically, I saw about 10 years ago Fallout 4.
Yeah, I was Trash Can Carla.
Right.
Yes.
So with all of your experience on film, how did it feel to do some voice acting? What was that like?
Well, I mean, you were sort of trained to do the voice acting through ADR. A lot of things that you do, you have to sometimes, if the sound isn't good or there's a plane going over something, you have to go and, redo it in a sound booth. As a matter of fact, in Alien, the whole scene where Tom is up in the rafters and the alien's coming in, and Yaphet and I are down below telling him and screaming to him to get away. We had to, once they edited it, Tom and I had to go into an ADR system and recreate that entire thing, standing next to each other, watching the film and just reacting. So what you're hearing is actually an entire ADR. We did it, but they didn't know how it was going to fit in with the edited version. So I had done a few cartoons. We actually did the Alien. There's an Alien, whatchamacallit? Yeah, well, yeah, I guess it's a game. It's an Alien game. And so when I got this part of what, she wasn't called Trash Can Carla at that point, I went in and actually did about 6 voices for it. And it was a couple of days, 2 or 3 days that I had to go in. Because you do all these things and you're basically given a sheet of paper that tells you what's going on. And then you have to do it several different ways. So that for the gamer, if you survive, if you don't survive, so you have to do a death thing, and then you have to do a thing where you're gathering everybody. I remember there was a lot of medical stuff I had to do, because I was grabbing bandages and all of that stuff. I don't know, I've never seen the game, but I didn't even know I was called Trash Can Carla until I went and did one of these things in McAllen, Texas, and it was a group of drama schools that all of the drama schools had come in, and they flew me in to do a talk for the drama school. And what did they have up? They had Alien, they had those things, but the first thing that came up was Trash Can Carla. And I went, oh, I didn't even know what I looked like.
So that was what I was going to ask. When you were recording for the games, you don't get to see what your character looks like.
You don't.
So does that make it harder to perform when you don't know the look or anything like that?
No, I mean, well, it's weird. You have your things on and you're standing in a booth, and then there's a director. He tells you what is happening in this scene and sort of gives you a little hint and sort of, tells you what to do. But it's different.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's you're basically talking to a piece of paper. But that's showbiz, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, but.
My co-host, who's going to be joining us here soon, he's a huge fan of Supernatural, and unfortunately, I've not gone down that road yet because it just seems too daunting to me, because there's like 3,000 seasons and 1 million episodes of the show.
Yes.
But you were on that show.
Yes, I was.
How often are you asked about that?
Well, I played the woman. What was her name? Lily Schreider. I had the patch on my eye. Another woman had done it as a younger version, and then I was doing her as an older version. So now this is a tricky little thing. I actually got 2 things. I got Sabrina, the witch, and which is the one on Netflix, and Supernatural at the same time. They were both shot in Vancouver. So on my way going to Vancouver with my bag, my wheel got stuck on the escalator, and I slipped, and another lady fell on top of me, and I didn't know it, but I re-broke my hip. So I worked for 5.5 weeks on a broken hip. It was really, they asked me at one point on Supernatural to get down on the ground. I said, I don't think I can do that. I mean, they didn't know I had a broken hip. I did have a pad that I was sitting on, and oh my God, my feet were so swollen. But they said, all right, we can do it standing up. They were very calm. It was great. So, but the whole thing when I first got there, 3.5 hours in customs, now they've changed it. The Chinese were coming into Vancouver, buying all these properties, and they were leaving them sitting vacant, so that they were just buying properties, and then there was no homes for people who needed homes, and the homeless situation started getting really bad. So when I arrived, it was me, and every seat was filled with Chinese people. And there was another actor there, and he was before me. I mean, 3.5 hours in customs to get through. And of course, they all had their families, and I mean, it was really a trip. From there, I had to go and do a wardrobe fitting for Sabrina, because they were going to go on a 10-day hiatus. So I went and I did that. And then I had to go over the bridge on the other side of town to do my wardrobe for Supernatural. So it was, by the time I got back to, I thought it was going to be a hotel. It turned out to be an apartment. There wasn't even a bottle of water in there. It was 9 o'clock at night. And I thought, oh my God. Anyway, it all worked out. And the guys on Supernatural, they're just absolutely adorable. And they said, so how was your trip in? I sort of explained to them. I said, where do you get a bottle of wine around here? They went and they got me a bottle of wine, this beautiful wine glass, a bottle opener. And they said, here, for tonight. It was so sweet. That was great. They're darling. Those guys are just darling. And Ethel, yeah, Jensen has a new series called Countdown. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it's really quite good. It all takes place in Los Angeles. I mean, those guys have been doing that show for so long. You know, they live in Texas. And so they bought a jet. So one of them would have the jet, and the other one supplied all the fuel. And while I was there, they went off to see a concert in Austin. So they just took that jet and off they went. They were there bright and early on Monday morning, but off they went. It was, I guess after 17 years, hasn't that show been on, something like that? They figured out how they could get home. I mean, I know Jensen has 3 kids, and so I don't know. They were great. They were terrific, and it was fun working on it. I hadn't really seen Supernatural, but there's a whole history, and there are avid fans out there.
The fans are die hard, and my co-host that's going to come in, he knows everything about it. He can tell you which episode this person was in and what they said and what they did, so he'll be happy to hear that. All right, my friends, questions for Ms. Cartwright, right here.
So I guess going back off of his original question about how you felt on the set of The Birds, compare that to how you felt on the set of Alien.
Oh, compared. Well, I mean, one I was 12, and the other one I was, 30, I think. Alien was a beast of its own. I have never seen sets like that. We took over the entire Shepperton studio. It was massive. Everything was, what you see was totally practical. That scene with the desert, they took over the largest soundstage in Europe at the time. They had sand everywhere. They had the front part of the ship, and it was way up high. It was like, you had to take a forklift to get up to the top of it. And then on the other side were the caves, which looked like, big vaginas. He was adorable. He was very sweet. He was strange. The first time we walked onto the set, Balaji was getting dressed for his working the suit out, and he had like the bottom half of the suit on, and they were working on, because it was like gloves. He used to get into gloves and put this whole suit on. And he was 7'2", and so you go by and here's Giger, always dressed in black, had a cape. I mean, and his wife would always have a cape too. She comes swirling in. I mean, they were really eccentric. The set for the ship itself was all connected. It was one sound stage. You walked into the electrical room. In the electrical room, you went down a corridor. To the left was the hospital. To the right and more to the center was the cafe place. where we had that blood bursting scene. So it was very claustrophobic. Ridley cast a great group of actors that he felt he could let alone, because what is Ridley's thing is what it looks like. He did commercials, he used to do graphics, and these amazing commercials and stuff like that. So everything to him was visual, what it looked visually. I remember we were doing one scene where Ian Holm, he's the robot, he had now lost his head, and there was, the building, there was a table, and we had to put him all together. Well, here's Ian underneath the table with his head sitting in. He has milk poured over his head, there's grapes, there's these little tiny, hi guys, little tiny cake things, little silver balls, all this stuff. Here he is sitting in this table. Anyway, he starts to give that speech. And the speech was, has anybody tried to communicate with it? Well, of course we hadn't. Nobody had tried to communicate with it. And I always thought that was such an interesting thing, because it's kind of like Beauty and the Beast. I mean, always horrible, and as Ridley had originally said, it's like a deer. And then the fawn, and if you get too close, it panics, and so that was more what I thought the alien was going to be. But where he starts giving this speech, and I mean, it was so touching, I was crying, and all of a sudden I hear, oh, cut, I hate these fucking balls. He was talking about the little silver balls that were, I mean, who's watching that? Nobody. We're acting our hearts out here. I mean, we've got cameras. It was, oh dear. So he was more interested in what things looked like. But poor Ian had to go back a month later. We'd already left and all gone back to America or wherever our place was. And Ian had to go back and redo it, and they rewrote it. And he just had to do it by himself, kind of like voiceover. And then that took a different change, I think, for the attitude of what the alien was. He became more of a beast that just was out because he had to survive. He had a very short lifespan. I mean, he starts out as that face hugger, and then he grows into that penis thing with teeth, and then he has to leave. He has to start making hosts, and like Tom up in the rafters there, where he can feed off of him. But what I loved about the first one was that there was only one, and the second one, it had a few more. But then it got ridiculous. Like the fourth one, they looked like sperm swimming across. I mean, there were so many of them. It was just ridiculous. I mean, and that sort of takes away from it. And what I'm curious about, I haven't watched it. I've only watched a half an hour of that Alien Earth. But it's supposed to take place, parts of it, before. But they have an alien in there. So we were the ones who discovered the alien. So this is where I always get confused. And Prometheus, I got confused there too, because Michael Fassbender is the robot. His head's here and his body's there. And this is supposed to be 25 years before we even found the planet, and he's talking to himself. Well, what happened to did we go backwards? It's kind of like now, isn't it? We sort of go backwards, and we had to put them all together. I don't know, it was a little weird. But anyway, where did we? It was a lot different. But I've done a lot of stuff in between there, and different directors all have different attitudes, and but it was an experience. I mean, if Tom was here, he would tell you he just knew from instantly that it was going to be a major hit. I mean, they didn't know. We were shooting a B movie. I mean, it was only it was $11 million originally. And then they sunk money in it, and it ended up being a $19 million movie for what you have, which you can't duplicate that. I mean, it was magnificent. The space jockey, we're climbing all over this space jockey. I mean, we look like little ants. And for the desert scene, they actually used Ridley's kids, 2 of Ridley and 1 of Tom's, and dressed them into little suits so that when they do the massive shot, they look even smaller. But what was interesting about that was our wardrobe man made these suits. Those were actual football things. They weighed about 50 pounds. We had a helmet that went on top of that. We were in these sort of bubbly space suits. They'd line them in nylon. We had space boots and hockey gloves that they'd spray painted so they had no flexibility whatsoever. And they'd forgotten to give us air holes. So what was happening is when the CO2 canisters are going like this, we're going, do you see like smoke going around? Because we'd see these swirling things. It turned out the CO2 was leaking into these. All 3 of us passed out at one point. John was the first to go because he's the one who makes it across the desert. Poor John was in his drinking days. You couldn't even see John's face by the time he got to the end. His sweat was unbelievable. They also forgot to give us any mics. They had to run over with a nurse to give him oxygen. But you were all latched in with these big hasps and stuff. Then, when we have to carry John, who's now gotten a face hugger on me, across the desert, I thought they would give us like a mannequin or something. Ridley goes, no, put John on there. So here's John on this, and Tom and I carrying John with moon boots, all of this gear across this desert landscape. Oh my God, by the time we got to the lift, which took us up about 25, 30 feet up on the top there, I was like this. And here's Tom trying to grab me, but there was no flexibility. He's going like this and he's shouting, help, we need help. I passed out. And then Tom ended up passing out at one point. I mean, so we were actors complaining. But when it came to the kids, and there were Ridley's kids in those little suits, and they passed out, oh, all hell broke loose. But it was a little late for us. And on top of that, it was 100 and some odd degrees in London. It had a heat wave. Oh my, I lost like 15 pounds. When I take the suit off, there'd be like a pool of sweat. It was so disgusting. Oh my God. But we made it through. And I guess that, is part of the whole thing, which makes it look like we're truckers in space. That's what we were supposed to be. So, did I answer your question?
Absolutely.
Anybody else?
Next. Right here?
Oh yeah, I was a teenager, a young teenager when I saw the movie, and we were with an exchange student, and she knew some English, but not much. And when we watched it, I think when we got to your part where you started to shake, I think everybody just closed their eyes. They knew something was gonna happen to you, and we'll never forget it. After everything, just from that part, I think the whole rest of the movie, I just closed my eyes. But I think yours was the most expressive. But that part where you saw the alien, that affected us so much. I think when we got home, we didn't talk almost the whole day. The next day, we were still in shock because we never were used to that. But to this day, this was my favorite movie. Does anybody still tell you hey, did you get any negative type of reactions to people because of it?
Originally, I thought I was playing Ripley. I had only auditioned for Ripley, and even when I got over to, I happened to be over in England, and I said, if that part's not cast yet, I'd really like to go and audition for it again. And it hadn't been, so I went in and I read again for Ripley. And so when I got the movie, also there's quota systems. I was British, but living in America, and they needed people with, American accents. They had needed to have sort of a bunch of people. So I I called my agent, because they called me and said, so you need to come in and do your wardrobe for Lambert. And I said, oh no, I'm Ripley. They said, no, you're Lambert. I said, oh, really? So I called my agent and I said, am I not Ripley? He goes, yes. I said, well, they don't think so. So I called the producers and I said, you know, I haven't even read this script from her point of view. I mean, as far as I knew, all Lambert did was she just cried all the time. And I said, you know, I'm really not interested in doing that, but let me see what I can do with it. If you think about it, I guess Lambert is the audience. She's actually the smartest one. When things start to go to hell, she's the one who says, let's get off the ship. If one of us has to stay, they have to stay, but let's draw straws, let's, you know. So I really didn't want to make her into a weepy person. I do like the director's cut better, where I get to slap Sigourney across the face. Because that was an interesting thing. You know, she doesn't want to let us onto the ship because we don't know what this contaminant is that's on him. But I'm saying, you know, you have to let us onto the ship. And of course, the robot, you know, he presses it and opens it, which you don't know at the time. So I come in and I confront her and I slap her across the face. Well, every time I went to slap her, she would duck. And so my direction was, you can get her this time. And so I said, okay. So I went like this, she ducked and I backhanded her straight into it, and the look on her face and instant tears sprung to her eyes. God bless her, she didn't break character, but she just kept going. But that, I thought, was really made Lambert something different. Not just a weepy person. She was going to stand up for what she thought was right. So I was sort of disappointed when I saw that they cut that out of the original. Of course, I think you were talking about leaning into the bloodshed, which I didn't know was there. We only shot that scene once. We were held up in our dressing rooms for hours. And then we came down, and of course John had been, he had a fake chest, and I don't know where he was sitting. He must have been sitting underneath the thing, and so it had a fake chest, and it was filled with offal. I mean, oh God, the stench was unbelievable. Big buckets of offal were around the set. I mean, and everything was covered in plastic, and you go, oh, this is weird, when you walked on. And I started to gag. I mean, it was horrible. These horrible, you got your guts and all that sitting in there. Anyway, we started. They were 4 cameras to cover all of us, so we get the original reaction. They started to shoot it, and of course you become so totally fascinated because there'd been an incision made across the chest of the t-shirt so that the puppet could come through. Well, we're all like this, and we're watching, and all of a sudden Ridley shouts, cut, cut! And then the guy comes in and he cuts the t-shirt a little bit more, and of course tensions, what the hell's going on here? So by the time we shot it, that's what you see was all of our reactions. I was so fascinated. I did not know there was a blood jet there. I leaned right into the blood jet, which of course hit me square in the face, and so, oh my God. And then I backed up, and my knees hit the banquette, and I flipped upside down, and I wore cowboy boots in the show, and my cowboy boots were sticking up like this, and I thought, oh God, they're still shooting. I rolled over and I ran back in. Totally ridiculous. But they let us all go see the rushes for that day, because we never got to see any rushes, but for this day they let us go see them. It was hysterical because it looked like a Max Sennett movie. I went, da da da, and then I just disappeared. And then there are these 2 cowboy boots. On one of the reissues somewhere, they found that footage, so somebody's got that footage somewhere. But oh my God, it was totally ridiculous. It was a very intense scene, and it really works. I must say, everybody was really into it. You know, as the movie goes along and things start to break down, the air conditioning, you'd stand there in the morning and they'd pump glycerin on you. So that, oh God. By the time you got home, you were so disgusting. Because every particle of dust, everything was like all on you. My hair, originally my hair, I'd just come off of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, so my hair was down the middle of my back. And then Ridley decided that he wanted Sigourney to cut her hair, but something happened there, and she said no. So guess what? So about 6 hours it took him to get to that point. He kept cutting it and cutting it. Then he comes in with a picture, and it was during the punk period of time, when people, it was ridiculous, people with plaid pants and chains of their next partner, you know. And of course there was big spiky things all over their heads. So he says, that's what I want, do that. And I thought, oh my God. So the next thing I know, I've got this crew cut that's about 1 inch long. And I said, you know what, we can spike it with gel. No, I can't go around with my hair like this. I have to, well, we were there 5 months for crying out loud. So they kept cutting it down. And when, of course, I got back to the United States, nobody had a crew cut. They go, what the hell's with her hair? And then Liza Minnelli finally cut her hair, and then it became very popular. But at the time, it was difficult to get work after I got back. So.
We have about 5 minutes left, so if there's a good, quick question that someone has.
I'm sorry, I
No, it's great stories.
Yeah?
Right here? Who we got?
I just wanted to ask about the birds.
Oh, the birds? Yeah, we were on the birds earlier. You missed that. What did you want to ask about the birds?
I don't know, like, I mean, what's your thought? I mean, did they scare you? Were you okay with it? I mean, I see they're fake and real and.
Well, there were a lot of birds. The chimney scene, we were all in, we walk onto the set, which was wrapped in a gigantic plastic bubble. There were about 15,000 birds that they had collected from street signs all over. I mean, the ASPCA was not too happy. They were in shafts up the chimney. So what happened was they would pull these shafts, and of course the birds would come rushing down, and they would hit the top of the plastic ceiling and then just drop, which was awful. It was just awful. I mean, and Jessie trod on one, and oh God, she was beside herself, which made it work really well for me. I just looked at her, and I was a basket case too. But what we realized we had to do was shuffle. So, and they would come with big things afterwards and just scoop them up like big poop scoopers, and then take them and stick them back into things. We shot that a whole bunch of times. It was really not very attractive. But that was the day they threw me my 13th birthday party on the set, and the entire cast and crew. I mean, I looked like a basket case before I even got in. I didn't know they were going to throw me a party, and that was great and very sweet. But then we always had birds around. There were trained birds. Buddy was a trained bird that would peck when they would tell him to peck and stuff like that. We had a lot of hammerheads with heads of birds on them. So that, like, when they're breaking through the doors and things like that, you could see the beak and things like that. They had all sorts of puppets. They had puppets made in Germany, so that when the kids are running down the hill, they would have birds on their back that moved and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there were a lot of birds around. And poor Tippy was stuck for a week having birds thrown at her for that scene in the attic. And they would take like bird seed and put meat on it and put it on her face. So the birds looked like they were grabbing flesh and stuff like that. She ended up in the hospital. We shot one scene with her photo double because she was in the hospital. She was exhausted by the time that ended. I think that was partially why she didn't like Black Alfred so much. I think it might have had something to do with it. I'm sorry?
You didn't get hurt or bit or?
No, No, Rod Taylor actually got some sugar glass in his eye because they would put birdseed down when they had where he's trying to close the shutters. So there were real birds there, and one of the birds went and it broke the glass, and he got some stuff in his eye, sugar glass and stuff. So I never had any problem. I think, all in all, they were very sort of sedate. I mean, like at the end of the scene, I have a picture at my table where it's when we've come out and we're out there and Alfred is there directing us, and there's birds all over. The birds were there, but they just sort of wander around. And we had guys with big nets. And they would like shoo them back onto the set as they would just say, "Hey, what's happening?" They're wandering off the set and stuff, and then big shoo them all back on. But all in all, no, I didn't get hurt. I mean, it was very weird. Years later, I had a house that had wood shingles on the roof, and these crows decided they would make a nest, and they were pulling these wood shingles off of my roof to make a nest, and I came out and I looked, and there must have been 20 birds on my roof, all yanking away, and I went, "Wait, I have done this movie before. I don't need you here." They all like looked at me and went back to work. Oh God. So, but I mean, every time you see, it is funny, you see lines of birds on cables and stuff like that, and you always go, because why not? Why couldn't that be possible? I mean, it's like, and what made it so scary, I think, or creepy, is the fact that it's something we see every day. And here it is, taking over. And we never know whether it's Tippy or not. The original ending of the movie was we were supposed to drive away, and the birds came and started pulling the convertible top off. And that's what's in my script. But we never shot that. They just decided to leave it as a mystery.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Cartwright.
Sure.
So if you look at the camera right there on the iPad, his name is Jerry.
Over here?
Right here, that iPad.
Oh, hi, Jerry. How are you? Nice question about the birds. And thanks for happy birthday.
All right, thank you.